But, Rosa, since then, there's been more news about Pete Hegseth. He apparently can't hire a staff. Nobody wants to be the chief of staff of the Department of Defense, which is actually a fairly significant job. And apparently the place is in chaos and people are getting together and they're going to write a letter and say Pete Hegseth isn't up to this job, which I could have written that letter, months ago. But in any event, the Pentagon is in disarray. Do you hear these rumors and do you give any credence to them?
I hear these rumors. I will, and the rumors clearly are based in fact. The Pentagon is in disarray. You start firing people right and left, and that's pretty much what happens in any institution, especially when the firings appear to have no rational basis except for people who pissed off Donald Trump or Pete Hegseth at one point, plus a little dose of randomness thrown in just to mess with everybody's minds. I mean, yes, it's in total disarray. I think it's a symptom. It's both a special disarray. It's a sort of like Tolstoy, right? Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. There is every Trump administration agency in disarray is in disarray in its own special way. So Pete Hegseth's unique style is adding an extra layer of chaos to everything at the Pentagon, because he seems, as you said, he seems to be completely incapable of keeping any senior staff who don't either quit or get fired within weeks of being hired. And usually when they go, they go with a few tell-all leaks in the process saying what a jerk he is and how incompetent he is. So they seem to be even more in disarray than most agencies. I think it'll be really interesting. I also have seen the rumors that senior staff, including senior military officials, are circulating some sort of internal letter calling for his ouster because he's essentially incompetent. I'm a little bit skeptical that this will actually happen, or that if it happens, it will have senior people who aren't already on their way out the door signing off, because of the climate of total fear that Trump has succeeded in created throughout the administration. So it will be interesting to see if that goes forward. I mean, it's quite clear that if you did a secret ballot poll of senior military officials and civilian officials at the Pentagon, that it would be 9-1. This guy is incompetent. He needs to go. But I think it speaks to how frightened everyone is. Our friend of Deep State Radio, Frank Kendall, former Secretary of the Air Force, had a op-ed in the Times the other day commenting on how unprecedented that climate of fear is, and he tells a story that I think all of us here can relate to. During the Bush administration, he was one of the many people who said the U.S. should not be using torture. And he said he remembers saying to other colleagues, despite the fact that we're so upset that the U.S., in our view, is heading in the wrong direction when it comes to the use of torture, at least we live in a country where we can speak out against our own government, be sharply critical of our own government without fear of retaliation. You don't have to think, well, if I say George Bush is a bad guy, he shouldn't be allowing this, that I'm going to go to jail. It's safe. And he said that's just not true anymore. That doesn't feel true to people anymore. Right now, people, when we've got former President Obama being accused by Trump of treason, that really does create a climate of fear.
Kori, you wanted to gesticulate or say something?
I do want to add something. I agree with everything Rosa said, but I do not want to cede my signet ring of pedantry to Ed Luce. And so I feel the urgency to say that it would be a really bad thing for active duty military people to organize a letter criticizing the Secretary of Defense's suitability for the job. That is actually above their pay grade, and it's bad for civil military relations. For the active duty, that is Congress's job. That is the civilian leadership's job. It's a dangerous thing to allow the military to decide in a free society which civilians are suitable to direct policy.
No, Kori, normally I would agree with you, but I think we may be at a moment where that has changed. I mean, and as you know, I've sometimes argued that there is a danger of letting some of our norms about civil military relations become kind of rules of etiquette more than anything else, where we're drawing distinctions that have no real difference. And I think, I mean, all of us, I think this is a really hard question, right? I mean, all of us as a general matter think the military should not be politicized. I think we all agree with that. Equally, I think all of us could come up with some extreme hypothetical, your Holocaust type of hypothetical, where quite clearly it would be the moral duty of a senior military personnel, no matter what the chain of command, to speak out, even if they were doing so publicly against the civilian leader. And somewhere in, we're in the gray area in between, right? And I think the question for all of us is sort of how close are we to those moments where you just have to speak out because things are that bad? And I mean, I should also note for our listeners, we have no idea if the rumors of this letter are accurate or not. And we don't actually know that senior active duty military commanders are planning to sign on to anything. And as I said, I'm actually pretty skeptical that would happen. So I think we're talking about a hypothetical, but I don't think any of us want to, I don't know that I would want to say that I can't imagine things getting to the point where it is a moral duty, regardless of chain of command, et cetera, to speak out, regardless of civilian control of the military norms. Are we there yet? Maybe not, but clearly there's a point where you get there.
So speaking of the gray area in between, Ed, what do you think of this?
I think I don't wear signet rings, so Kori should keep her signet ring.
I thought that, by the way, was perfect, because people who wear signet rings are often pedants. And
yeah.
Is there a secret deep state radio signet ring? There should be one.
There should be.
It's a secret, isn't it?
I think we should be told. I think
we should be. You should be.
No, I mean, I only have one thing to add to this, which is, what I should have said in my first answer is Hegseth is an imbecile. And, Kori and Rosa will agree on that.
Yes.
And I think they will agree that, regardless of whether it is proper in this situation for people inside the Pentagon to make any public protest over the quality of their Secretary of Defense, the man is an imbecile, and it would be a 9-1 at least vote on that. And I do know that the combat commanders and others were mortified to be pulled out of this thing, and it wasn't just them. It was like there's a Rising Leaders program attached to Aspen, of young people in their early 30s, and there was a couple from distant commands who'd flown across oceans to get to Aspen and had to turn back because it reached down to those levels. It was an absolute uniform ban. And all it does is expose the shallowness, performative imbecility of a man who should never have got near that job and who is a danger to us all while he's in it.